Morning clawed its way through clouds that bled grey, the sun a distant, sickly orb. Mist curled thick and cold between the cottages of Blithburg, clinging to thatch and timber. The air hung heavy with the promise of rain, pressing and unkind. Eleanor Reed stifled a yawn as she banked the fire, embers flaring in protest. Her fingers ached from yesterday's washing, knuckles red and raw, but there was no help for it. The mending would not wait, nor the hens, nor the herbs that begged cutting before noon. She pulled her shawl tighter, the wool rough but warm, and set a kettle to boil. The thatch above groaned under the wind's assault, a hollow, mournful sound. Outside, the marshes lay smothered beneath fog, reeds whispering with every breath of air, words half heard, half feared. Eleanor crossed herself, a habit more than faith. "Keep us," she murmured, eyes on the crucifix above the hearth. A splintered thing, its edges darkened by smoke. The gesture brought no warmth, only a flicker of guilt quickly smothered. The kettle's shriek shattered the silence. She started, huffing at her own nerves, and busied herself with tea and bread. Her hands soon found their rhythm, kneading, folding, setting dough to rise by the fire. When a knock came at the door, sharp and hurried, she nearly dropped the pot. Mary Weaver stood on the threshold, shawl pulled high and eyes wide. "Have you heard then?" she demanded, breathless. "Jacob Turner's girl, the youngest, gone missing in the night." Eleanor's hands stilled. "Gone? In this fog?" "Not a trace of her," Mary said, voice low and tight. "Turner's hound was found dead, throat torn clean. Some speak of wolves, though I've not seen hide nor hair of one in years." A chill traced Eleanor's spine. The woods held foxes and feral dogs, perhaps, but wolves? No, not here, not now. She forced her hands to move, pouring tea that sloshed in the cup. "She'll turn up," she said, more for herself than for Mary. "Lost her way in the dark is all." But Mary's mouth was set thin. "Perhaps." The door fell shut with a dull thud, and the shadows crept closer, thick and unwelcome. Eleanor stared at her hands, still trembling, tea slopping over her knuckles. "'Tis foolishness," she chided herself. A child lost was no devil's work, but when she ventured to the yard, boots squelching in damp earth, her eyes strayed more than once to the marshes, where fog choked the ground in a deadening hush. By midday, whispers had spread from the green to the churchyard, tales of a black beast stalking the woods. Eleanor forced herself to work, herbs to cut, sheets to mend, chickens to pen. But the air was too still, the silence too heavy, and more than once she caught herself glancing to the road, waiting for footsteps that did not come. When the storm broke, it was sudden and ferocious. Thunder growled in the distance, and wind clawed at the shutters, rattling them in their frames. The hens squawked, feathers fluffed in panic, and Eleanor cursed under her breath, fighting the latch with numb fingers. Her cloak hung by the door, still damp from morning, but there was no help for it. The storm would not wait. The road was a smear of mud, treacherous and slick. Rain drummed against her hood, half blinding her as she stumbled toward the village. Holy Trinity's bells tolled through the gale, iron voices strained and wavering. Lightning split the sky, casting the church steeple in stark relief, a spear against black clouds. Eleanor hurried, skirts tangling about her legs, breath coming in shallow gasps. She had nearly reached the churchyard gate when the first scream came, thin and brittle, cut short with a sickening finality. She froze. Her gaze darted to the doors, thrown wide, light spilling out to stain the fog. And there, in the shadows, eyes, burning red, fixed on her with a hate so fierce it stole the breath from her lungs. It moved without sound, a hulking mass of darkness, fur black and matted with rain. A hound, but no earthly beast, for its eyes smouldered like coals, and its paws left scorch marks in the stone. Eleanor staggered back, hand at her throat. "Lord, save us," she gasped, but the words tasted of ashes. The hound's lips peeled back, a snarl or a grin, she could not tell. It passed her by with a heat that scorched the air, shadow slipping through shadow. Eleanor fell hard to her knees, palms scraping stone, but her eyes stayed fixed on that door, the darkness beyond, the screams that rose and died and rose again. She did not follow. She could not. Her legs refused to obey, rooted to the ground by a terror she could not name. The hound moved within, swift and merciless, red eyes cutting through the dark. There were bodies on the floor, blood seeping black between the stones, and the priest's voice was a choked prayer that ended too soon. When at last the beast turned, it met her gaze once more. For one breathless moment, Eleanor saw her own grave in those eyes, dark and waiting. Then it was gone, slipping into fog and rain, leaving only silence and the smell of scorched stone. Morning came pale and hollow, dragging the sun up through clouds that bled grey. The church doors stood open still, marked with black and smoke. The priest was dead, throat laid open, and the scorch marks remained, proof enough of what had passed. By evening, the whispers had begun. Some spoke of God's wrath, others of the devil's hand. But all agreed on one thing. Black Shuk had come to Blithburg, and death had followed. Eleanor said nothing. Even as they gathered to pray, to scrub the blood from stone, she kept to the shadows, hands still trembling. For she had seen the eyes of the beast, and in them the promise of her own grave. And though the sun rose again, it brought no warmth, only the cold certainty that the hound would return.